Dreamland.
So I went to the movies for the first time in like a really long time the other day.
Wow. When was the last time?
I think it was when we saw Doctor Strange, like the last Doctor Strange movie, whenever that was.
Oh, wow. That is a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. So you're actually very loud now.
Am I? Oh, dear. I'm sorry about that. Let me turn myself down a little bit. How's now?
I think it's good. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, we went to see this movie. It's a Finnish movie, meaning from Finland, called Sisu, which is a Finnish word. And it ties in so nicely with our topic today. It's just this, it's like The Man with No Name meets Rambo.
Okay.
It's set in 1944 Finland as the Nazis are heading out. And it is just, I mean, like, it's amazing. I would literally go back to the theater and see it again.
Wow. Yeah, I saw a trailer for it, and I think it's subtitled, isn't it?
In some places, the Germans actually speak English, and the main character doesn't speak at all. So,
right. Oh, okay.
It doesn't really matter.
No, I guess not. No, I had a recent theatrical experience as well. I went to the cinema, but I went to see something from 1986, and it was interesting because it was more full. There were more people there than I have seen in other modern movies recently. So it was Aliens that I went to see on Alien Day.
Alien Day.
Yeah. And it was the extended edition, the director's cut. And but I hadn't seen that projected before, so it was really fun.
That's awesome. People are saying you are twice as loud as me.
Really? Oh. That's very strange.
Am I too quiet? Okay. Scott says it's fine. All right. Well, we just, we do our best with the sound. But, it's always wonderful to have a good film viewing experience. And these days, it's hard to come by, I find. Like, the last movie we saw, which was that last Doctor Strange movie, was a real bummer for me because I love Scarlet Witch. I didn't love, pretty much anything that happened in it. So I was kind of bummed out. So yeah, but that kind of does tie in to, what we're going to be talking about today, like I said. So welcome to Dreamland, everyone. My name's Melinda.
Yes. I'm Conrad.
And today we kind of changed our format because we went ahead and told you guys what we're going to be talking about, which is going to be 80s, 70s and 80s Stallone. But we had some wonderful topic guesses for our watchword stallion, which is just, a wonderful word to use. Timothy Hayes guessed that we would be talking about the Black Stallion, which is a very solid guess. Mark Peterson guessed My Little Ponies on Steroids, 1980s style, which is a fun idea. Colt guessed Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Wild Stallions. Now that is a great guess. Like, I didn't even think of that one.
I love that idea.
Yeah. Matt Cargyle says Frank Stallone, which that's a great idea. But Matthew Kearns, of course, kind of got really close. The only stallion worth talking about, the Italian stallion, Rocky Balboa. So we are indeed talking about my favorite. Of course, anyone who knows me knows that I love Stallone in all of his many forms. And so we were talking a while back, and Conrad had mentioned to me that he had never seen. Now let's start off. you had seen some of his films, correct?
Yeah, so I crossed paths with Stallone in the 90s around the period of Cliffhanger and Demolition Man. And I think I might have seen Judge Dredd, but maybe not all of it because I thought it was terrible. But that's the sum total of my experience of Stallone. And I know that I'm missing one or two fairly important movies, I think.
In theory, anyway, right?
Yeah,
So,
in theory.
so, um, Conrad, we were talking about what do we do the next time? What do we do the next time? And we had a topic that we were going to be doing today.
Mm-hmm.
And like a few days before we had our last show, Conrad was like, what if we did the thing where like I watch some of Stallone's movies and then like we just and react to them and we kind of like do this thing, and the idea kind of grew and we both kind of fell in love with the idea. So we've kind of done this in a really fun way, I think, where we've got Conrad giving us some guesses, which we pre-recorded, right? So Conrad and I had a call just one-on-one that looks just like this, StreamYard style, and we had Conrad guess like what he thinks is going to happen in these movies. Now, Conrad, I can pretty much assure you he did not cheat. He did not read the Wikipedia articles. I don't think he knew a lot about Truly. Like, is that right, Conrad? You didn't know?
Yeah, no idea. All I know is just like parodies, satires, jokes, just sort of the general media sort of image of him and these characters. So I was just guessing completely based on that.
Okay, great. I love it. Well, that's how it seemed. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 of Stallone's movies. So Rocky, of course, comes first because you have to see Rocky. And then First Blood. And I did pick the first one because it's my favorite. I would say that I kind of was thinking of having us watch the second one only because it's the more iconic one from a mass media perspective. And then we initially asked our patrons to vote on the third one, and they picked Tango and Cash. But the more I thought about it, I was like, Tango and Cash is not a terrible movie. Like, it's kind of okay. There's stuff to talk about there. But I kind of wanted you to see one of the Golden Globus Canon films. So we opted for Over the Top because it's definitely a departure in some ways and not in other ways for Stallone. And it definitely lost money. So, oh yeah. So I kind of wanted you to see all over the map 80s Stallone. So anyway, those are the 3 movies we'll be talking about here. We do, after this show, we will be doing a Patreon exclusive after show where we will be doing a watch along of Tango and Cash so that we do honor the vote that our patrons had. So if you're on Patreon or if you'd like to join our Patreon for just $1, you can check that out. I think it's going to be really fun as well. So we will go ahead and get started with the beginning, which is going to be, I just wanted to point out the fact that these 3 films that we picked are the 3 films that had Stallone depicted as an action figure in the 80s, which is kind of interesting. Like, I'm not really quite sure why they picked Over the Top for an action figure. I did not dig into the like backstory of why, but
I can't imagine. That just blows my mind that there's a figure for that. Did it have an arm wrestling action? Or?
It does. Yes, it does.
Good grief. Okay.
There's a switch on the back, and his arm, whatever. And I think he came with the opponent guy. I'm pretty sure. And yeah. So of course Rambo had a whole action figure line, and that's where I have to show you my first prop. My first thing as a huge Stallone fan. So this is in the 80s. We love these like silky windbreaker jackets. Okay.
The force of freedom. Oh, that's
This
amazing. Please
this
tell me you
is
wear it in public.
I it's white, and I really don't want it. In theory, it was signed by Stallone. It is not something you can find very easily, but
Oh,
in this inside patch, I don't know if you can see it. There's like the very, very faded, what looks like his signature. I do have his
okay.
autograph on a photo upstairs that's like made out to me, which I didn't bring down here because I'm very persnickety about it. But yeah, so that's one of my most fun little pieces of little paraphernalia that I have.
It's
So
great.
let me put on my official Stallone Rocky hat. Okay.
Okay, you look the part now.
Yes, and let's talk about Rocky. So, I'm going to start off by let me take this off the screen. And you guys, I'm excited to show you Conrad's guesses in the pre-show of what we're going to talk about here today on Rocky. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
What you think Rocky's backstory is?
I think he's definitely an underdog. He's a working class guy. He's a lone wolf. There'll probably be a scene early on where you see him being great with kids or rescuing a cat from a tree. Something.
I can make some really sick jokes about this, but I'm going to refrain.
Is he a boxer for a living, or do you think he's something else?
He probably wants to make a career out of boxing, and I think he has a love interest in it, because I vaguely remember seeing clips of him screaming some woman's name. So, and I think she doesn't want him to do boxing, and I think her brother or father probably has like a really nice, boring job lined up for him if he marries her and makes an honest woman of her, and like carpet fitter or something like that.
And, something burly, something manly.
Something that's still manly, but in a way emasculating, because he'll be working for his wife's family.
Like, what would he be like if you were hanging out with him, do you think?
I think he's a complete pussycat when you're hanging around with him.
Okay. All right. So I never expected to have so many cat references in the first question of the Rocky thing.
Of course, I've weaved them in throughout.
Thank you. Describe to me how you think the romance part of the movie will go.
She wants him to quit and become the carpet fitter.
Are they already together, like at the beginning of the movie, or do they meet during the movie?
No, they're already together, because it's the kind of movie where the romance is the B plot, so they can't be bothered to do the whole meet cute and everything. Yeah, so they're together, and she wants him to quit, and he's going to have some fight in the middle where he gets injured in some way and it goes really badly, and she's going to leave him, and then you're going to have like the misery montage, because you know how you have bliss montages in movies, you also have misery montages where there's a sad tune. It's probably going to involve a saxophone and definitely rain.
Tell me what you think will happen in the final fight.
Well, the final fight is going to be against somebody who is emotionally significant for some other reason, like some guy that always bullied him in school or hit his mother with a car or something. There's going to be some reason for previous enmity between them.
The end of the fight will be
him knocking out the evil guy and humiliating him, and everyone's going to be really happy.
Everyone's going to cheer. It's going to be amazing.
Good grief.
Nailed it on all fronts, clearly.
Yes. I think I got a few things wrong. So perhaps you should introduce us to what this film really is.
I like your version better. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. All right, so Rocky Balboa is a struggling boxer. Okay, he also works as a collector for a loan shark. So he's kind of a bruiser, but he does have the heart of gold. he's, you know, in the mythology of the movie Bible. I don't think it's ever stated in the movie, but he's about 31 years old, same age as Stallone. So he's a little over the hill for a boxer. He's kind of a long shot to make a real name for himself. And the heavyweight champion of the world, I guess, is Apollo Creed. And he announces this plan to hold a title bout in Philadelphia during the upcoming bicentennial for the United States. So it was like this huge thing in 76, which Conrad, you may remember as, I think you're also a bicentennial baby, but you're British. So it's probably a little different for you. But anyway, America was like, woohoo! We kicked England's butt. Anyway.
Oh.
I don't know. I was just an infant. But anyway, so his opponent pulls out like 5 weeks before the match. So he's kind of come up with somebody else, and he decides to do this publicity stunt where he gives this unknown underdog fighter a chance to fight him, thinking, of course, that it's obvious he's going to win, but it'll be like, you know, he's going to give him a real shot. You know, it's a really cool thing to do. And he picks Rocky, even though his manager's like, I don't want you fighting a southpaw. Of course, Rocky's a southpaw, meaning he's left-handed. So it's hard for a lot of regular fighters, I guess, to fight a southpaw. But anyway, he trains with a former boxer, Mickey, who owns this club that Rocky's been sort of practicing at and working out at for years. He starts a romance with the very shy Adrian. And Rocky pushes himself to go the distance to prove to himself that he's not just some bum from the neighborhood. And I guess, spoiler alert, he doesn't win. He doesn't win the fight.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't, he loses, but it's kind of like he doesn't get knocked out. So that was all he really wanted to do, was to not get knocked out. Because he's like, there's no way I can beat Apollo Creed. Like, there's just no way. Especially with only 5 weeks lead time, right? So,
yeah.
So anyway, that's the gist of the story. And now I'm going to guess what if Conrad is going to give this movie a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So this was kind of hard for me because this movie did win like an Academy Award. And I think it's the only one of Stallone's movies aside from, I don't think Copland, I can't remember if Copland did, but I don't think you're going to like it. So I'm going to say Conrad gives it a thumb down. But we'll find that out later. Like,
Interesting.
Okay.
Well, would you like to see me watching the movie?
I would like to see you watching the movie. Yes.
Okay. Well, I have a little video prepared for you. So, yeah, if you want to bring me up on the screen, we can check that out.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Let me know if it's too loud or too quiet, everyone. Okay. Conrad watches Rocky. Here goes. Is the title big enough? No. Oh, you see, he likes puppies. Not cats, but puppies. I can get behind that. He's popular with street singers. No kissing. Does that happen a lot in boxing locker rooms?
Yeah, you know.
Hey, Rocky.
Yo.
Screw you, creepo.
See, animals and children.
Yeah, who you?
And homeless people. He's a nice guy.
Kiss me back if you don't want.
Wait, I don't think that's how consent works. I sense a montage. Wow. His fitness level's worse than mine. Montage. Did he win or not? No, I don't want to watch Rocky 2. Well, it's very 70s independent filmmaking. It's quite slow by today's standards. It didn't have all the beats that I was expecting to, like the misery montage and so on. The romance was like the full rom-com meet cute and everything. I didn't really get what was going on with the brother. Did anybody have any arcs or payoffs? Just found the whole thing emotionally flat, and I don't know whether he won at the end or not, or what happened really. She said that she seemed to make him happy. That's good, I guess. No, I thought it was kind of boring. Okay. There you go. So I'm sorry to say that the Academy Award winning groundbreaking cultural milestone that is Rocky got a thumbs down from me.
I got it right.
You did. You absolutely guessed how I would respond to that. I think it's a little unfair because I think the film, it's of its era, so it's kind of aged a little. So if you don't have the nostalgia for it, I think it's kind of difficult to come at it cold.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I was aware of as I was watching it. For this, obviously, I've seen the movie a lot of times, but I was watching it trying to view it through what I imagined your eyes would be seeing.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's kind of slow. There's a lot of stuff that hasn't aged particularly well. And so again, you have to watch films, we all know, through the lens in which in the time that they were made. But at the same time, some of that stuff is just a little bit weird. Like, I don't know. But
yeah,
it is a bit slow. I still enjoy it, but I'm a huge Stallone fan. And I also grew up with Rocky films, like all of the sequels. So let's talk a little bit about Rocky in general. So let's see what my next slide is. All right. So Sly began acting in the 60s in small stage productions, and his first film was a softcore porn called The Party at Kitty and Studs from 1970. That's this film. It was later changed to be called The Italian Stallion right after Rocky came out.
Oh, come on. That's just mean capitalizing on that.
I know, right? It is.
Oh.
He says he was so desperate. This story, like many of Stallone's early stories of his career, the story kind of gets a little bit bigger, but I think the core of it is still true. He was desperate for money. He had been evicted. And this film paid him $200 for 2 days' work. And so he took this role. And then, later, that was in 1970. So in 1973, he was his first real credited role in a serious movie was in No Place to Hide. And then he, in 74 and 75, was in The Lords of Flatbush, Capone, and Death Race 2000. At least two of those, a lot of you listening are probably familiar with those films. So this is the lead up to Rocky. So Rocky entered development in March of 1975, and Stallone supposedly wrote the screenplay, and I've heard this for years, that he wrote the screenplay in about 3 days after seeing a Muhammad Ali fight. The production process was super complicated because Stallone refused to allow the film to be made without him as the lead role, and they really wanted some other people to be in that role. So I think hang on a second. I'm just gonna pop up. I thought I had anyway, I'll come back to that. Sorry. They wanted a lot of other people in the role, but he was like, no, I'll never forgive myself if I don't put myself in the lead for this. So basically, the movie did really well. Now, this is adjusted worldwide box office, okay, for Rocky. Because obviously 1976 dollars are not going to be analogous to modern dollars. So I used 2021 dollars to figure this out. So the green titles indicate the Rocky films that he directed, and the ones with a little blue line after them, it's kind of hard to see, but he was a writer. So he wrote all of the Rocky films, and he directed Rocky 2, 3, 4, and then Rocky Balboa. So the only 2 Rocky films that Stallone didn't direct were the original one and the 5th one, which any Rocky fan knows is the almost universally reviled Rocky.
Wow. Oh,
Everyone
okay.
hates Rocky 5.
Oh.
Rocky
dear.
5 is like Star Trek 5. It's like the one everyone hates.
Maybe it's just 5s generally.
It could be. It could be. But
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a good 5 now. If anyone can think of one, let us know.
I mean, it's not Nightmare on Elm Street, I'll tell you that.
No, it definitely isn't. I thought that.
5 is hard. So yeah, I think the 2 big Rocky 4 was really, really big. It's shocking to me that Rocky 3 is not didn't earn more. It's a great film. I would say it's one of the most solid in the franchise. I know Michael thinks it's one of his favorite, if not his favorite, in the whole franchise. Maybe
Very
Rocky
famous theme song as well, if I remember rightly.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
Eye of the Tiger, isn't it? That one?
Is it 2 or 3? I honestly can't remember.
Yeah.
Rocky 1 and Rocky 2 are like Halloween 1 and 2 in the sense that they literally, the second one starts the second the last movie ends.
Okay.
At the end of that fight.
Does Rocky end up in the hospital in a bad wig?
Huh? Yeah. You can't start guessing on those now, Conrad.
Sorry.
Okay. So basically, in order to get himself into the lead role, he refused like a 6-figure deal and then he and the film rights, and it's a very complicated story about the film rights. If you're familiar with some of the recent interviews Stallone has been giving about Creed 3 and how he'll never watch the film, he's in a kind of a lifelong war with the guy who has the Irving Winkler, I think is his name. It's a whole thing. So the budget of this movie ended up being just over $1 million, with a further 100,000 spent on producers' fees, blah blah blah. But as I said, it was the first sports movie to ever really win a true sports movie. I think Ben-Hur won, and that's sort of sports, but it's the first like modern sports movie that ever won an Academy Award for Best Picture. And so these are the sequels that came out of that process. So just three years later, we got Rocky 2. And then in 1982, we got Rocky 3. 85 was Rocky 4. The infamously bad Rocky 5 in 90, and Rocky Balboa in 2006. So there were several movies that people say are inspired by Rocky. I don't know if I agree with all of these, but of note, it's Flashdance, Footloose, The Karate Kid. The Karate Kid, interestingly, has the same director, John Avildsen. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but you mentioned, I think you sort of were pulling tropes that come out of Karate Kid in your guesses.
Yeah, I think I was. I was thinking of that, and probably Real Steel, the huge Hugh Jackman film with robots, which is also a boxing movie and probably draws its inspiration from Rocky. But yeah, who knows?
And so the only other things that I want to point out about this movie before I hear more of your thoughts on it are that the dog, Butkus, that's Stallone's actual dog that was in the movie.
Really?
Yeah. And there's this whole wonderful story about, well, it's kind of sad, but he had actually sold the dog because he was so poor, like I mentioned before. And then when he made all this money from Rocky, he went, no, it was from something else, but he bought the dog back at a very expensive price. And he brought the dog to the set every day because he didn't have a good housing situation, so he didn't have a dog sitter, so he basically ended up in the movie. So,
Oh,
and then the other thing is that Stallone still has Cuff and Link, the two turtles that are in Rocky. They're still alive.
really?
Mhm.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. What's their lifespan generally?
It's like 30, 40 years. I mean, I think it may be longer because obviously it's been
Wow.
40 something years, however old we
Did you
are.
not? Does the cynical part of you not think that maybe he swapped them out a few times and just not told anybody?
Maybe, but I've heard it through the years that he's had those turtles. So
Ah,
yeah,
wow,
pretty
that's
neat.
pretty.
I
That's
like
pretty
it either
amazing.
way. I like the mythology of it. So
Yeah.
yeah. So what did you what's your overall takeaway now that you've had a little more time to process it? Just is kind of boring.
Yeah, I think that's just a factor of it being a film from the late 70s or mid 70s. It's just the pace of storytelling is very different, and because I don't have any nostalgia attached to it, and I'm coming to it cold, it just feels that way. So similarly, I remember Serge saying in one of our podcasts that Star Wars was really slow and boring, and
True.
anybody from my generation is like, "How dare you?"
How
But
dare you, sir?
yes, but then you think about it from somebody of his generations, he's coming to it fresh, and of course it doesn't have the same pace or movie making style or editing rhythm as a modern movie. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much a sucker for a sporting movie, even though I'm not big on sports. Any underdog story um, where people, the team that isn't expected to win wins against incredible odds, it gets me every time. But he didn't win in this. It was more a story of resilience, and I sort of respected that because I really expected it to be about winning at all costs, because that seems to be very much part of the the American psyche.
Yes.
There's nobody wants a draw or anything. So
Right.
yeah, so I was impressed with that. I was impressed with Stallone and his acting.
Okay.
I really didn't understand what was going on in terms of the family situation, and the romance did not light a fire in my heart, to be honest. It seemed sort of, I don't know, like he was grooming her. It didn't look good to me, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was okay. I just found it nothing really grabbed me. I found it kind of flat.
I honestly think you might some of that stuff is better in Rocky 2 and 3. In terms of Adrian starts the arcs, as you mentioned, sort of are across multiple movies. So, Adrian in the original Rocky movie is so painfully shy that she is it's hard to relate to her at all. She really comes into her own through the series, and she doesn't stay that way. Like, she's really not even like that as much in the second movie, even though it's continuous almost in terms of the time in the movie, right? So, she's just her brother, Paulie, who you mentioned not really getting, he's just very abusive, right?
Oh, okay.
And it makes her be that way because she lives in this house with him, and she doesn't I guess their parents are deceased, and so she's there, just taking care of him, and there's nobody there building her up, telling her that she's pretty, telling her that she's got anything, and from a 70s woman perspective, a very shy, 70s woman perspective, she kind of needed somebody else there saying, "No, you're awesome," for her to have the strength to finally, which she does, stand up to Paulie. So I think she has probably the biggest arc in the movie because she finally breaks out of like being so sheepish and shy and standing up to her brother and then literally moving in with a guy out of wedlock, which in a very Catholic, traditionally Italian part of, Philadelphia, like at
Yeah.
that time, still probably kind of a big deal. So I kind of think I really like her, but again, I've seen all the movies, so it's hard, you know.
Yeah.
Just seeing this movie, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to come at something. I mean, it's a cultural landmark and it's an Academy Award winner, but you watch it now and you it's difficult to recreate the magic that it must have had.
Yeah.
when it first hit theaters. But yeah, it was an interesting experience for sure watching it for the first time. It had a lot more integrity and depth than I was expecting.
Well, I'll take that as a win personally, because when I initially pitched the idea, I was like, oh, well, this is going to surprise him because Rocky loses the fight. And he's not going to think that. He's not going to guess that. And then it turns out you didn't even know what the heck happened. And honestly, when I rewatched it, I was like, it's not tremendously clear because the announcer says it at the end when everything is chaotic and loud. So it's kind of hard to hear.
It is, yeah. All of the announcer stuff. I don't know whether I'm getting old, but it was just like it was like, train announcements. I didn't get a single word of it, which is why I was lethally bored in the tense lead up to the final fight. Just bored out of my mind. I didn't know what was going on. But
yeah. Well, that's what you get for like a low budget 70s movie with probably not the best sound, and I don't know, but
yeah, it was probably mono at the time, I would guess.
I know that stadium was at least half empty because they couldn't get enough people in there. So they just tried to keep the lights really low so you couldn't see how empty it was. So.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, I am not surprised, but honestly, I'm kind of glad that you didn't completely hate everything about Rocky. So
no, I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it at all. But it just wasn't as interesting as I was hoping it would be.
Yeah. Well, let's go back really quickly to your score for what you guessed. So you actually got 25% right.
That's not a great score, is it really?
Out of 12 questions, you got 3 right. So the 3 you got right were he's an underdog, a working class guy, a lone wolf. So you got that. He does want to make a career out of boxing. And he is a pussycat to hang out with. I initially gave you only half credit for that because he is like a kind of
an enforcer.
Heavy.
Yeah.
But even then, he's like, Gazzo tells him to break the guy's thumbs. He's like, okay, the next time I'm going to have to break your thumbs.
Yeah, I don't think you really would have felt that kindly towards the central character if he broke someone's thumbs in Act 1.
I would, but I'm a weird person.
Yeah. Okay. So there's room for improvement, is what you're telling me in terms of my guessing ability.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. We're gonna see if it gets better or worse as we go along.
Oh God, I'm remembering what I said about the next movie, and my hopes are not good.
All right. So our next movie, of course, is First Blood, and this is from 1982, and if it's not my favorite movie, it's in my top 3.
Wow.
So,
okay.
let me pull it up and we'll see what. Let's see here. What you think Rambo's backstory is?
I think he's an underdog and a working class guy who joined the army because he didn't have that many economic options, but also out of a sense of deeply rooted patriotism. Ended up in the Vietnam War, so now he's disillusioned. He's come home to his hometown, but everybody's wary of him. You'll see him early on in the film doing really nice things for people around town, like fixing somebody's outhouse or...
Where does he live? He lives in the 1915 time period. Tell me what you think will be the primary conflict in the story.
Although the townspeople have driven him out and they're wary of him, all of a sudden they need him because the town is invaded by a drug cartel of unspecified South American origin.
And so it'll be like him just in the streets of the town, like having an out-and-out war with this drug cartel.
Yeah, sort of like the A-Team or something.
Okay. Rocket launchers and
cars exploding, but strangely no one hurt. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Well, speaking of no one hurt, how many people do you think he will kill?
He's probably the kind of guy that tries not to kill people.
Okay.
But he'll kill like the leader or like some really bad person at the end, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe just 2 or 3 when it's really necessary, when they're holding children hostage or cats. At some point, there will be a long monologue about the horror of war, where the camera slowly pushes in on his face. I also think at some point there will be a montage of him tooling up, loading and preparing just an obscene amount of weaponry and building booby traps of some kind. There'll be a scene somewhere where he completely coincidentally is framed by an American flag.
How do you think it will end for him?
I think he'll be injured in some way. There'll be an obligatory scene where he has to stitch himself up. Probably with just vines and spit. Yeah, he will prevail, and the town will suddenly realize that the violence within him isn't something to be feared. It's a vital part of the American culture and protects them all. So he'll have
so
like
that's the underlying theme, is that the violence is the good thing.
It's good, yeah. Violence is good, and there'll be like a medal ceremony or something.
It'll be like the end of Star Wars. Okay.
Oh, God. Oh dear. I don't think I did very well, Melinda.
I found it to be extremely entertaining.
I bet you did. My goodness, how wrong was I? What was I thinking of? I have no idea.
I don't know.
Just ridiculous.
No, but it's
really
great.
Ridiculous.
So, for anyone who hasn't seen the original First Blood film, it is about a Vietnam vet and drifter named John Rambo. He wanders into a small Washington town in search of his old friend, but his friend has already died from exposure to Agent Orange. He's the last of his group in Vietnam. He gets into this town. He's met with intolerance and brutality by the local sheriff, Will Teasel, who's played by Brian Dennehy. And the sheriff and all of his guys rough Rambo up at the police station a bit, and it sort of triggers his PTSD, and he kind of goes off on them and runs out into the woods, and it becomes this whole, standoff, one man against the local sheriff and then the National Guard and all these people, and he's hunting them basically and trying to get his revenge. And it's sort of an analogy for how America treated Vietnam vets when they were coming home from the war. A lot of them felt very not seen and not treated very well. And so I think it had finally been long enough that, since Vietnam, that they could make this film. So I'm going to just pause really quick and give my guess as to whether you give this a thumbs up or a thumbs down, Conrad. So I'm going to put myself on the line here, and I'm going to say you give this one a thumbs up.
Okay.
And maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part because I love this movie so much. It is honestly like I said, it's one of my favorite films of all time. But I totally understand if you don't like it. There are things about it that may not resonate. But so this, did you want to go ahead and show your reaction, or do you want me to give a production history?
I can go ahead and show you my experience of watching Rambo, if you like.
I'd love it. Yes.
Yep. Let me know if it's too loud or too quiet again. Here we go. Okay. Take 2. Conrad does Rambo. Actually, it's First Blood, isn't it? First Blood. Music's good. Welcome to Hope. You could do with some.
Hey, Preston!
Bunch of arseholes. I hope he kills all of them.
Hey, keep moving, because my dog's going to run at the same time. Straight to the top.
It's not. Jesus. This is not what I was expecting at all. Oh, is he stitching himself up? He is. It's gruesome.
I'm gonna get that son of a bitch. And I'm gonna pin that Congressional Medal of Honor to his liver.
Brian Dennehy's an asshole. Is he making booby traps?
What's the matter? You afraid of the boogeyman? You goddamn pansy.
Homophobic assholes. Don't hurt the dogs. Oh no. It's like the Predator.
I didn't come here to rescue Rambo from you. I came here to rescue you from him.
Those 80s cars that explode as soon as you touch them. I don't know how we survived driving in the 80s. Oh my. This isn't exactly low profile. What did he have against the petrol station? I knew it. He was always going through that skylight. I was not expecting that.
And every new town just seems mine.
I could do without the song. Well, that is not what I was expecting. Surprisingly heartfelt at the end. He clearly has very severe post-traumatic stress disorder, and he really didn't deserve anything that he got there. He wasn't really trying to kill anybody. So a very sympathetic figure, and not the sort of muscle-bound killing machine that I kind of think of him as, having never watched any of the films. And it's a really good film. It's a great action movie. I mean, you establish the character in 5 minutes and then it's off and it doesn't really stop. And it's all beautiful location shooting and real stunts. And you know it's all real because it's 1982 or whatever. So it's not all bloody blue screen and fake like everything is now. That's a really good film.
Yep. It was a thumbs up from me.
Yes. Yes, on every front. That's so awesome. Yeah. I'm really glad you liked it. I was like, God, if Conrad hates this movie, I'm gonna feel so bad.
Yeah, I'm tracking some of the comments in the comment thread, and yeah, people were going to throw themselves off buildings and drown themselves if I didn't like this. But yeah, it's just a really good action movie. And I can see, lots of people hold Die Hard up as the pinnacle of action movies. But actually, I think, having seen this now, I think Die Hard owes a debt to Rambo almost in a lot of ways. So, yeah, it completely was different from what I was expecting. And I was not expecting to sympathize with the main character as much as I did at the end. And for him to be as vulnerable as he was at the end.
Right?
Yeah. So very impressed with that. I really enjoyed it.
Yay, I'm so happy. I'm so relieved as well. Because I was like, I'm going to feel like a fool. All right. So I do want to give you a little bit of backstory on the whole production and the film and everything like that. So This, of course, is based on the book First Blood by David Morrell, which came out in 1972. So really soon, like I can't remember when the Vietnam War ended, but it was around that time. Lots of originally Columbia bought the rights to it in 72. So it came out, it was kind of a hit. Columbia was like snatched it up. And lots of directors and studios had been throwing it around in Hollywood for years, trying to figure out a way to make it. And they just couldn't figure it out. The book, which I have right here, Michael bought me this. It's a first edition.
Ooh, nice.
The book. It's got this lovely cover over it, so it's protected. But yeah, it is. It's a very different story. So I know some people in the comments were talking about, you know, in the story, it goes in the book. It's one chapter is from Rambo's point of view, and the next chapter is from Teasel's point of view. And so Teasel being a Korean War veteran, and so it kind of doesn't make him as much of a jerk, Teasel, in the book. And Rambo is a lot more of a jerk, and he does kill more people, and he's a lot less sympathetic, and they kill each other at the end. So it's sort of talking about the futility of just and trying to bring, like, turning people into monsters, so to speak, when they go to war, and then expecting them to just fit back in instantly into regular society, you know. But Stallone was Stallone classically gets into movies and wants to rewrite them. So whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's a thing he does. And so he's the one who kind of pushed back and said, that's not the message I want to send to Vietnam vets. Like, I don't want them to think that the only way out is for them to die. In the original filming of this movie, Rambo dies. They filmed the scene. They played it in front of audiences, and the audiences hated it. Like, they hated seeing this character die. And he's killed in the movie by his former commanding officer, right? So it's in that scene, he's in the room with him, and you know, he asks him to kill him, and so he just kind of does, because he's like, oh well, I've made this monster. Interestingly, a lot of other actors were considered for Rambo before they got to Stallone. So some examples are Robert De Niro, Clint Eastwood, Steve McQueen, Chris Christopherson, and a very strange choice is John Travolta, which when you look at these guys all in a row, it's like, one of these things is not like the other.
No, I suppose if he didn't shave and mussed up his perfect hair a bit, maybe, but I'd still find it a bit difficult to swallow. But maybe that's just because of Travolta's screen persona developed in a different way. So yeah,
I guess. I mean, I think to me, I just think of 1982 Travolta. Okay, so it's Saturday Night Fever 2. Yeah, whatever. So it's just it's not great.
No.
There were a ton of scripts and studios involved, but Ted Kotcheff, who ends up making the film, he's the one who offered Sly the role, and his involvement prompted it to finally get produced, because of course Stallone had by that point done Rocky and Rocky 2, and he was also friends with Henry Winkler, and Henry Winkler had gone from the Lords of Flatbush, which they were in together in the 70s, and he had gone on to the very successful Happy Days, and so he had pull with the studio as well. And so Stallone was using all of his ends to get a little bit of leverage to get this movie like kind of changed and made the way he wanted it to be. So anyway, the budget, let's see, I've got that here. Let's look at Rambo movies. So First Blood came out in 1982. Its adjusted worldwide box office was only 350 million. The audience scores are in the mid 80%. So it's pretty universally liked overall, from both the Rotten Tomatoes score as well as the audience score. First Blood Part 2 is the movie from 1985 that I think really sets the tone for Rambo movies, okay? Rambo movies change dramatically when you get to First Blood Part 2. It's a completely different style of movie. I don't think you would like it. I don't recommend you watch it. It's only got a 33% tomatometer, or however you say that, but it's got a 60% audience score. So I don't know. It made like double what, or more than double what the first movie made. And I don't even think that was just the name recognition. I think that people like that amped up on steroids version of, Rambo. Rambo 3, most people hate it. I happen to really kind of like it. And then Rambo from 2008, which was sort of his Rocky Balboa, bringing this character back in the 2000s. It didn't do that well box office wise. The audience scores like 69%, but it has a terrible tomatometer score of 37%. I disagree very strongly with that. So people are just like, how do you rank the Rambo movies? I would rank them First Blood, Rambo from 2008, Rambo 3, and then First Blood Part 2. And I don't even really count the most recent one from 2019 because it was horrendous and whatever. But yeah, and so very different movies though. I'd say Rambo from 2008 is probably the closest you're going to get to the character we saw in this movie.
Yeah. See, I'm probably thinking of 2 and the
are.
cartoon that followed in terms of my image of who the character was.
You mean Rambo, The Force of Freedom?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
It's the best. It's got, the eagle. It's got, the flag. It's got all the things.
Yeah.
These movies are just, they're kind of crazy looking when you even look at the movie posters of Rambo movies. They're everything that this is probably what you were thinking of, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
A big muscular shirtless guy with a giant machine gun or rocket launcher.
With a big weapon.
Yeah. He's holding it very proudly and he's like an army of one.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not something you'll be shocked to hear that I was lurching for in the video store to take home to watch.
Why?
Just did not tick any boxes for me whatsoever. Yeah.
I don't think you would enjoy any of these movies.
No.
I don't. I mean, even the 2008 version, which I love, I don't know if you'd like it. You might. I don't watch the others. Just don't. This movie, like Rocky, while this was not the first lone hero action film, it set the tone, I think, for a lot of 80s action staples that focus on the post-Vietnam United States and these lone wolf badass characters. So some of the examples are, and these are more inspired, I think, by First Blood Part 2, but you've got Chuck Norris's Missing in Action series, which I believe is a Canon production as well. POW, The Escape, which is also known as Behind Enemy Lines and also known as Attack Force Nam. And then you've got the really low budget Strike Commando with Reb Brown, who was in Uncommon Valor, but also, of course, famously was in Space Mutiny.
Oh, him.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, marvelous.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you should watch that one if you're going to watch any of them, because it's probably the funniest one.
I'd watch the Riff Tracks version for sure.
Sure, right. I personally think it set the stage, like you said, for other 80s films like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, and probably more Die Hard, because Lethal Weapon's more of a buddy cop thing, whereas Die Hard is like the lone wolf character, who's totally justified in everything he's doing, and
Yeah, it's sort of a staple of 80s action movies, and it kind of died out in the 90s, and now we've got a different type of action hero now.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I did note in reading about this was it was 6 years after Rocky. Stallone hadn't really had another really huge film at that point, and he kind of put himself on the line for this movie. And he was actually really regretting signing up to be in the film because he was just like, this is not the greatest script, and I don't think it's going to work great. And then apparently it was so bad when it was first made that it sickened him, and he wanted to buy the movie and destroy it
Oh, wow.
because he thought it was going to end his whole career. So it was
Oh.
heavily re-edited, including taking out that ending and replacing it with the ending that it actually has. And so this version is the one that got released to theaters. So of course, a lot better. One thing that I do want to tell you is that first of all, Kirk Douglas was originally Troutman. And he came on the set and he wanted to rewrite everything. He wanted Rambo to die. And he was so difficult to work with that they fired him one day into filming. And they called
wow.
Richard Crenna, and he literally got on the plane that afternoon to fly there and was like reading the script, trying to start memorizing his lines. So they had to start feeding him his lines because he just walked in going, I've had no preparation. I've literally had 24 hours. Additionally, there were so many injuries on the set that everyone went to the ER like over and over and over. So that clip that you played with Stallone falling from that tree, he actually did fall through that tree and broke several ribs doing that. He almost lost his finger during the scene in the mine because a squib had gone off. He was constantly close to hypothermia because he wasn't wearing hardly anything. And it was really, really cold. That fire hose scene was so powerful that it knocked all of his prosthetic scars off. So they had to keep reapplying him over and over. Scene where they're hitting him with the pipe, like they actually hit him a bunch of times and it hurt really bad. Brian Dennehy actually did his own stunt and fell through that window and also cracked several ribs and hurt himself really bad. And Stallone himself, when he punches one of the cops in the police station, he accidentally really punched him and broke his nose. And so you see him with the Band-Aid over his nose. That's like a real injury from Stallone punching his face. So I highly, for any of you who do not have not watched Stallone's commentary track on First Blood, do yourself a favor. If you like that movie, it is so entertaining and interesting. It is almost as good as just watching the movie. So I highly recommend it. Lots of great stories. Okay, I'll stop talking now.
I really want to check that out. Yeah. It's amazing to think that Richard Crenna turned up and just went at it cold because he has some of the best lines in the movie.
I know.
And he nails them too. So good on him. That's impressive.
Yeah. So you did pretty well, honestly, Conrad, on guesses for this movie. You got 35%, which compared to Rocky, pretty good. So he's an underdog. He's a working class guy. He has war in the streets like the A-Team. I give you half credit on that because it's not exactly, but he is blowing stuff up. So that's like the A-Team. He does try not to kill people. He does have a monologue on the horrors of war. And he is injured and stitches himself up with not necessarily vines and spit, but I still gave it to you.
Yeah, I'm amazed actually, because I thought that was pretty horrific in terms of how badly wrong I was.
So well done.
Yes, and considering I had absolutely no mental image of the next movie, I'm kind of scared because I can't remember what I said, and I think it's going to be ludicrous. Well,
you might surprise yourself. So our final film today is Over the Top. And it is definitely over the top. So here we go. I'm going to grab the preview. Okay, here we go. What do you think Hawk is going to be like as a dad?
He was an absentee father. I think he has never been in Hawk Jr.'s life.
His name is Michael, the kid's name.
Oh, okay. It's a nice name.
Yes, I like it.
Michael's great. I like Michael.
Yeah, so I think Michael usually lives with his mom, And the inciting incident of the film is that Michael, who's always fantasized about his dad's on-the-road arm wrestling lifestyle, runs away from home to join his father on the road.
And what do you think Lincoln Hawk, Link, what do you think his goal is in the film?
Just kind of aimless, kind of irresponsible guy.
He's not like the same type of character as in the other two movies. He's not like the lone wolf with the heart of gold. This guy's a little bit more self-centered, immature, possibly.
Yeah, I think so, because this was later in Stallone's career, so I guess he's going for depth now.
What do you think is going to be his arc then?
Yeah, so I think there's two arcs. There's the kid realizing that his father's his lifestyle isn't all it's cracked up to be, and that he's actually selfish. It'll come to some sort of crux moment where Hawk has to decide between the kid or some really important arm wrestling convention. And
Star Wars celebration of arm wrestling.
He's gonna ditch the kid, and the kid's gonna be completely disillusioned and realize that this is why he doesn't have his father in his life, and he's gonna lose faith in him. But also Hawk is gonna go on to the arm wrestling celebration and realize that it doesn't mean anything without Michael there with him cheering him on, and that none of this was important to him anymore, and so he'll go back for him.
Do you think that he actually competes and finishes the final competition thing, or?
I think Michael tells him that it's important that he does, so he does, and he wins, and everybody's very, very happy. Yeah.
Do you think he gets a prize of any kind, and if so, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, it's got to be some sort of medal ceremony. With cats.
Once again, we're at the end of Star Wars.
Yeah. There are going to be lots of early scenes of inappropriate parenting, like him giving Michael a beer for breakfast because he doesn't know what kids eat.
Okay.
At some point there will be a tearful scene of the two men attempting to articulate their feelings for each other through decades of repression and toxic masculinity. I'm close, I can tell.
Oh dear. It just gets worse, Melinda, to be honest.
The films has now gotten worse, I can tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, I had nothing to go on with this movie. I think I heard the song, the theme song, Meet Me Halfway by Kenny Loggins.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I had it on vinyl, but I did not know the movie at all. And it just didn't, it doesn't have the same sort of cultural cachet as Rocky or John Rambo.
I can't imagine why.
No.
Had you heard of this movie? Like, were you aware of it at all?
Very, very dimly, as I say. I'd forgotten completely about it until you mentioned it. So I was really flying blind on this one.
Well, good. I am going to guess that you definitely give this one a thumbs down. Like, I mean,
interesting.
Because if you give it a thumbs up, then we're gonna have to rewind and go back to Rocky and have a strong debate about whether or not it's really a thumbs down. Okay, so
okay, are you ready for this?
I am.
Okay, it's the morning after, so now it's time for film number 3, Over the Top. The kind of kid that doesn't want to throw his hat away. I like him already. Why does everybody hate Sylvester Stallone on sight?
This truck is disgusting.
He buffed up the truck specially as well. Snotty little shit.
You hot?
Pardon?
I said, are you hot?
Oh, Hawk. I thought he said, are you hot?
Special.
The blonde mullet was hitting on him.
Right now, double or nothing. What do you say? Let's just wait for Vegas. Come on, let's do it now. I feel like kicking some ass.
Let's wait till Vegas, okay?
You ain't got a prayer in Vegas. I'll see you in Vegas. Back up.
I think there's a big finale in Vegas.
Sorry.
I love you. I love you too.
Wait, is she terminally ill?
That's
I can
exactly-
see a custody finale. Didn't expect a montage in this one. Smells like a man.
Easy, Rich. I'll see you soon, okay?
Oh shit.
What? There's always a way to bend the law. Isn't that your job? Why don't you find the loophole?
Robert Loggia is an asshole.
Mr. Hawk, I'm sorry. Your wife died this afternoon in the operating room.
Oh dear. Who wears white trousers to a getaway?
Truly, the best arm wrestlers in the entire world.
It doesn't matter if you win or lose, Dad. I don't care about that. All I care about is being with you, Dad. I love you.
No.
I'll try.
I'm not sure where this is coming from.
Goodbye.
Those letters must have been bloody good. I think he's going to use his special over-the-top move.
I'll turn it around.
Well, I wasn't quite right in terms of what I was expecting. I mean, there was like a championship of arm wrestling at the end, which I was joking, but that apparently is a thing. I don't know. I mean, it's cheesy, it's flimsy, it's very 80s in its working class versus rich guy dynamics. It's not a good film, but still, the underdog winning at the end and getting his kid, it still pushed buttons for me. So I actually found it quite moving, bizarrely enough. So yeah, it's not the best of the three, but actually, oddly enough, I enjoyed it. So yeah, okay, over the top. Great Kenny Loggins song.
Yeah, I enjoyed the song much more than the Rambo song.
So are you saying you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
I actually enjoyed Over the Top.
Oh my god.
I know.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. But a father and son story, and then they tell each other that they love each other at the end and hug. It's just... It's one of those things. The whole movie can be absolute garbage, and then in the last 10 minutes, if you just press a few buttons and send people out on a high, they think that was a good movie.
Oh man,
works every time. But as I said, I know it's not a good movie. It's not a good movie.
It's not terrible. I agree. It's definitely watchable. I don't hate this movie. I just, it definitely didn't do great. Like in whatever. So this movie is we kind of already went through it, but it's like Lincoln Hawk. Here's something I have to point out, and I wonder if you noticed it. The movie doesn't seem to know the name of its main character. Did you notice that?
Well, I couldn't pick up what it was.
So in multiple scenes, all of the characters, including Stallone, call him Hawks with an S, and also call him Hawk with not an S. So it's very unclear on the truck. the door of the truck, like it says Hawk Trucking or whatever, you know. And so it's clearly a singular Hawk, but later on, like there are numerous times where it's Hawks with an S. He's usually in the credits, he's Hawk, Lincoln Hawk. But he's a truck driver, he arm wrestles. His son is in military school. His horrible maternal grandfather, you know, thinks that Stallone is like a poor. Like, I don't want my grandson hanging around with a poor. And they make it clear that that's why the you know, the mom and Stallone broke up, was I guess her dad was just interfering in their relationship a lot. And so it's kind of weak sauce, and they never really explain why he left his son and wife. But he does kind of allude, he takes responsibility for it, but it's like, I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird story.
It's weird. It's paper thin, as I said. It's kind of reminds me of the sort of scripting that you would get in an episode of Knight Rider or something like that. It's just
true.
Rich businessman is evil. Why? Don't know. He just is. He
read it in the script.
Yeah, and woman that's in the hospital just dies for no reason. She wasn't actually terminally ill. Yeah, she just dies of not being needed in the plot anymore. I don't know.
Right.
It was, and then the son's turnaround at the end, like, I really want to be with you. And I thought, well, you didn't the last scene, so I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, it was must have been inspired by the letters and like him realizing that his grandfather was kind of a douchebag, you know.
Yeah.
And
but we don't really see that. You see him read the letters, but you never see the grandfather. Like, I was waiting for the grandfather to hit him or do something awful to him, you know.
That might have been useful.
Something. But yeah. So this is a Golden Globus production.
This is a Golden Globus production, and honestly, one of the biggest things about this that I kind of have to tell you is the script had been written in 79, and by May of 85, they were finally able to secure Stallone. Now, Canon had also that's when they began creating this promotions campaign for this movie, which included this enormous arm wrestling tournament. Okay. That arm wrestling tournament was a real arm wrestling tournament in Vegas that they actually held for real arm wrestlers. And a lot of the men in the movie and women were arm wrestlers for real. They also had like feeder tournaments for like a year or so before this big tournament, where all over the world, Golden Globus like paid for all these tournaments, these smaller local tournaments all over the world. And the winners of those came in and they were in this big over the top tournament. And it's to me, it's just crazy. And I'll talk more about it in a second. But so Cobra had happened in like 1986, I think. And so this whole story, which I won't go into the whole thing, but a lot of people already know that Stallone had been tangentially related and involved in Beverly Hills Cop. And Stallone wanted to go and do his Stallone thing because he was like completely out of control with his ego in the 80s. And he was like, I'm going to rewrite this whole script. And so he was going to turn it much more serious and take a lot of the comedy out of it. And so he was going to rename Axel Foley Axel Cobretti, but they were like, no, we don't want to do that. So he went to Canon. They paid him, they gave him full control over Cobra, and that's his movie. And so it's like dialed up to 11. He was like, I'll show you, I'll make a cop movie like you've never seen. So he made Cobra, and it made this huge profit. Like it was like made, the budget was like, it had a US gross. It was a small budget, but it made like almost 50 million in the US and 160 million worldwide. Like it was huge profit. $135 million profit for a single movie. Like it's insane.
Wow.
So Golden Globus was like, hey, we've got this script that we really wanted to make for like all these years. You got to do it. This is arm wrestling thing. Stallone was like, this sucks. I don't want to be in this movie. And they're like, come on, it'll be great. And so basically they just kept offering him more money. And so apparently Stallone says in this article Roger Ebert, he says, Menahem Golan kept offering me more and more money. And finally I said, what the hell? Nobody's going to go see it. So he was just
Oh,
in the movie. And so because we don't really have any sequels for this movie, I wanted to kind of just look at all of Stallone's 70s and 80s films in general, just to see how they fare as these are his power decade. Okay, so you've got like Over the Top in 1987 did not do great. Like
no.
it definitely made, like, I think it was like the budget is estimated at about 25 million. The box office in that year was like 16 million.
Oh, that's not a good return, is it, really?
And no, so definitely lost money. And so yeah, he doesn't make any more Canon films after this. But yeah, it's kind of crazy looking at, you know, all of the movies that Stallone directed and wrote. You know, as the 80s go on, he just sort of was really coming into his own. But like this movie was, you know, and then of course Rambo 3 gets lambasted. It came right after this in 1988. And then of course in our Patreon after show, we're going to be watching Tango and Cash from 1989, which it did a lot better at the box office than Over the Top, but it doesn't have the best audience. Like the tomatometer on that is about the same for this movie, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll be
Okay.
interested to see if you like it.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I mean, it has Kurt Russell in it as well, which is always a win from my perspective.
Yeah, definitely. 80s Kurt Russell, which is kind of nice.
And less arm wrestling.
The biggest things about this movie are the arm wrestling stuff. So this guy John Bergink, I think I'm saying his name right. He's the real life arm wrestler guy who kind of inspired the Lincoln Hawk character a little bit. He actually won this big event, this Over the Top event, and he won that big truck and the white Volvo truck and the Trailmobile trailer that were the grand prize in the movie. That was the real prize. And this guy actually has his own YouTube channel. And so check him out if you're really into arm wrestling and cool stuff like that. And then, of course, you mentioned earlier the great Kenny Loggins single. Look at Kenny Loggins in the 80s. But yeah, it's one of the most notorious things about this movie, I think.
I love that song. I really liked it.
Well, so I don't know, like, how you think you fared on the questionnaire or the pre-show guessing that you did.
Not well, I don't think.
You might be surprised. You actually got 41%.
The least iconic of his films, and I managed to guess the most of it right.
Maybe it's the most predictable.
Quite possibly, and that might be why I enjoyed it, because it was just formulaic.
Out of 11 questions, you got 4.5 right. You got the absentee father. Link is aimless and irresponsible. I gave you half credit for that because he's not totally irresponsible, but he's kind of crappy because he abandoned his wife and kid. He ultimately chooses his son, and he does win the championship. And there is a tearful scene where they share their feelings, maybe even a couple of them. So yeah, how would you rank these films, like from best to worst?
In terms of being serious about their place in cinema history, I would probably put First Blood first, because I think it still holds up as an entertaining film, but it also has a really good, an interesting and thought-provoking message to it. And probably, I mean, Rocky is an Academy Award winner. It might not hold up as well now as it did when it first came out, but you know, it's still an achievement and a genre-defying film in and of itself. And then Over the Top, obviously, is just a piece of bubblegum trash. In terms of my enjoyment of them, it was First Blood by a country mile, Over the Top, and then Rambo, which is probably horrifying to your ears, but yeah.
No, I mean, I kind of get it. I get it. I do think that, like, your experience, not your personal, but a person's experience of Rocky is improved, certainly from a modern perspective, by seeing some more of the franchise. Because unlike
Right.
so many others, I really think that the characters develop well within the full arc of the films, and that includes Rocky himself, and Adrian, and I mean, uh, Paulie is always a jerk, so he probably doesn't have a huge arc. He's just a very selfish, horrible person. But I like the robot in Rocky 4, so I like the end song in Rambo First Blood. Like, I like the song at the end
Oh,
of
the old
yeah,
the gruff.
do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
I like it. I listen to it. I turn it on really loud just to irritate Michael partially.
So he's fighting with Kylie back, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's just a downhill Kylie showdown in your house on a regular basis. That's great.
It's a long road. Yeah.
It's the gruff vibrato that gets me.
I know.
It's terrible.
I don't know it, but I think it was a staple as well. Like, they started using it a lot in movies.
I can imagine.
All right. So now it is time for some super chats and I'm going to try to scroll through these comments and see if anything jumps out at me. I apologize in advance if I miss anybody. Let's see. We've got Wicked Person says that Rocky was clearly screaming for Adrian Barbeau in this Adrian scene, which is, kind of funny. Let's see. We've got Scuba Pete who says, yo, much love. Yo, Adrian. Thank you very much, Scuba Pete. And let's see. I'm scrolling pretty fast because I want to be sure we have time to get to our watch-along movie that's coming up next. So I don't want to lose out on any super chats, though. I don't think there are any more. So somebody yell out if I missed one. So I think, here we go. Analog Toy says, we need more clips of Conrad reacting to films. It's comedy gold. And nice hat, Melinda. Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you.
I saw somebody else comment that we ought to swap this round and I should make you watch some films and then you can react to them. And I like that.
I like that idea. We had so much fun doing this episode. I had fun learning how to edit videos, and yeah, it was all good. It was gold for me.
Yeah. And I got to be smart-mouthed whilst watching some movies. Whereas usually I'm very quiet watching movies. I don't usually talk.
Yeah, it's a very American-y thing, right?
Yeah. So, no, it was fun, though. It was fun. It
was very fun. And I hope you're ready to talk, because we're going to be talking a lot here in a few minutes when we're watching Tango and Cash. So, yeah, so, Master Son. Oh, money toward the more Conrad reactions. Love him reaction to American food. Oh, right. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, Michael reminded me also in the comments that I need to share my knife with you.
Oh my.
So this is a gorgeous knife that Michael bought me years ago for, I can't remember, I think it was Christmas. This was made by a guy who was trained by Jimmy Lyle. Jimmy Lyle made the original knives for the first two Rambo movies. The third one, of course, they switched to a Gil Hibben, but this knife, just like the one in the film, has the little part that screws off on the bottom. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it does have a compass in the bottom, just like Rambo's. And inside you can put, like in the movie, I think they say he had like some matches stuck in there and things like that, so that, survival. And then this is twine that you can take off for fishing, or whatever. So every part of it serves a real purpose. And this is not like, some thing that's got like the official First Blood logo stamped on it. This was like a handmade not one of a kind, but it's a handmade knife, and I love it, love it, love it. I have one from all of the films. Just the first two are made by this guy. Of course, the Gil Hibben it's a Gil Hibben, so you get that it's giant and crazy. So
Do you use it for cutting vegetables or no?
no, it's in a beautiful display case up in the living room with my autograph of Stallone from Rambo First Blood that's autographed to me, and my book here. It's like my whole First Blood shelf yes, I'm a fangirl. Yes, I am. Someone said that in the comments. So Wicked Person says, for some reason my memories of Over the Top are all mixed up together with my memories of Cliffhanger. Stallone saves the day while arm wrestling a rival rock climber after scaling a mountain to get to the arm wrestling venue. That's hilarious.
That's dedication. I like that. That's the sequel.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that is Stallone, when he talks about doing like Cliffhanger, he's very scared of heights, and having fallen through that tree probably did not help his fear of heights. But I think he was just trying to push himself, to do stuff that not be held back by his fear. Scott Hughes says, just because this was great, and remind everyone to join Patreon to continue the fun. So yeah, if anyone, if you've already got a copy of Tango and Cash, you can we'll show it on the screen a little bit just so you can sync up your copy, or you can join our Amazon watch party, but you will have to rent or buy it through Amazon streaming in order to watch it there. So it's unfortunately a pay movie, not included with Prime, of course. So anyway, yes, there were, just to respond to some of the comments too, there are a ton of 90s and later movies of Stallone's: Daylight, Cliffhanger, even of course Copland, some of his other stuff that's later that's very, very good, but we were trying to keep it in our time frame, which is more 80s. So that's why we stuck with 80s Stallone. So anyway, that about wraps up this episode of Dreamland. So you can find our show notes with all of our links to all of our sources at retroblasting.com/Dreamland. We will be back in May with our next show. So Conrad, what is our title for next time?
The title of the next episode is Snow Job.
Snow Job. Okay. Yep. So until then, you can follow me and Conrad on Retroblasting and Movie Oubliette respectively on all social media outlets, and you can email us at thedreamlandpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in the after show. Bye.
Bye.